Hello, everyone, and welcome back. On this channel today, we are going to start a series of lectures on diasporic fiction, in particular, uh, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. So, in the next few sessions, we continue with a discussion on this novel. So, before we start with the discussion on the novel, a quick introduction of the author. Jhumpa Lahiri is the dark naam, and this is an important term, dark naam, which is somewhat similar to a kind of a pet name, nickname, but not exactly similar. So it's her family name, right? And the name that is for family and friends, I would call it dark naam. Her official name is Nilanjana Sudeshna Lahiri, right? So, and this naming is important, so that's why I mention it right away. And it is important that she uses her family, or the name that she uses for family, and that she uses her friends. That's the name that she uses as an author. She is an American author of Indian origin. Her debut collection of short stories, Interpreter of Melodies, won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1999. The short stories are very sensitive, very interesting short stories. They address the dilemmas in the lives of Indians or Indian immigrants with themes like marital difficulties, bereavement over a stillborn child, disconnection between first and second generations of United States immigrants. And I think this last theme, the disconnection between first and second generation immigrants in United States, Indian immigrants in United States, that is an important theme in The Namesake also, the novel that we are going to consider. Namesake, written in 2003, published in 2003 rather, is her first novel. It was followed by another collection of short stories published in 2008, Unaccustomed Earth, The Lowland, 2013, and Italian novel written more recently. I'm not going to say the name because I don't know Italian, but that's the name here. I'm sure you can all see it here. That's her first Italian novel. So before we go to the novel, just to outline some main themes, some important themes in her writing and also in the novel under consideration for these lectures, The Namesake. So some important themes are experiences of Indian immigrants. So much of her own experiences growing up as a child were marked by these two sides: the first generation, the immediate immigrants, and then their offsprings, right? So the tussle between first generation and second generation is not something that she just saw, but it is something that she experienced, she lived through. So these form an important part of her experiences, her childhood memories. And here she says in one of the interviews, in one of her writings, when I first started writing, I was not conscious that my subject was the Indian-American experience. What drew me to my craft was a desire to force the two worlds, right? The Indian world and the American world, and the Indian world that exists in the American world in the life of the immigrants. So it was a desire to force the two worlds I occupied to mingle on the page, as I was not brave enough or mature enough to allow in life. Right? So in life, she lives that tussle. It's either or, right? Either Indian or American. And in fiction, she's trying to resolve that dilemma. She's trying to resolve these two sides. She's trying to bring these two sides together. So when she, as an adult, when she becomes an adult, as an adult, she found that she was able to be a part of these two dimensions without the embarrassment or the struggle that she felt when she was a child, right? So the difference, the embarrassment at being different that was felt by a child, she outgrew that, and she tries to bring it alive on the paper. And she tries to her fiction is about trying to reconcile the two aspects of her experience, two important aspects of her identity: being an Indian and being an Indian American. So, a kind of a reconciliation. Her fiction is an attempt to reconcile. And these autobiographical elements we find in her fiction, especially in the namesake, in the experiences of the protagonist, the central character, Gogol, also in the experiences of Ashima, his mother. We see this tussle between India and America. We see this tussle between first generation of immigrants and second generation of immigrants. And the novel is about a reconciliation between the two cultures, between the two generations. So the namesake explores these experiences through characters like Gogol, Ashima, Ashok, Moshami later on. So this is an important aspect. And as she says, as the other theme, of course, is the ambivalent identity. Now, if you remember the poem that we discussed, Sujata Mehta's A Different History, right? A Different History, where she talks about how colonization or how one culture erases or attempts to erase, murders, tortures another culture, and yet the children are the ones in whom these two cultures are reconciled, right? They love, or they are equally comfortable in English and their own native language. Now, something similar is happening here in Jhumpa Lahiri's diasporic fiction, right? Leaving India, leaving the homeland, leaving the native country, and immigrating or emigrating to the US. There's a clash of cultures. The American culture obviously dominates in America, and the Indian culture has to find its niche, has to find its place within that. So, what do the immigrants feel? The intense pressure of two things: to be loyal to the old world, to be loyal to home, at the same time be fluent, be comfortable in the new. And this is felt particularly in second generation, where you have the parents and the parental culture, and then the peer culture that they experience, the peer pressure, the peer culture that is American, and how there's an intense pressure to be loyal to both, to be fluent in both, to reconcile both. It gives rise to kind of hybrid identity, as I also mentioned in Sujata Bhatt's poetry. The identity coming out of the cultural clashes is an ambivalent identity, a hybrid kind of identity, which is a reconciliation of the old world or the homeland. In this case, in Lahiri's case, uh, India, Indian culture, Bengali culture to be specific, and also American culture. So the background of the book frequently draws upon her experiences, as I said, her experiences as well as those of her parents, their friends, acquaintances, and others in the Bengali community living in America, right? Bengali immigrants in America, and this is a culture that she comes from. This is a culture that she's familiar with, and she frequently draws upon the scenes that she has witnessed, the memories of childhood, her own experiences. So it is quite autobiographical in that sense. In her book, Unaccustomed Earth, she focused mostly on first generation Indian American immigrants. So, whether it is Interpreter of Melodies, which won Pulitzer Prize, or The Namesake, these are the books that focus on first generation and second generation Indian American immigrants and their struggles to raise a family in a country very different from theirs, in a culture very different from theirs. Her stories describe their efforts to keep their children acquainted or tied to the Indian culture, Indian tradition, and to keep them close even after in they have grown up in a different environment. So, as I said, the focus The focus on Indian migrant communities and the changes over generations, especially the longing, right? I'm sorry here, let me add there. The longing for home and the changing nature of home, right? So it's the changing nature of home in the sense that they are very aware when the immigrants, when the protagonists, the the family visits back goes back to India. They're also aware that India is not static. Bengali culture is not static. Calcutta, their home city is not static. It is also changing over the period of time. As is they change in America, their own culture, their city, their home country also changes over a period of time. The family changes, their deaths and their births. So the family changes. So there is a longing for home, the home that they knew, Ashima and Ashok, the parents, the home that they knew in their childhood. But that home is lost, not just because they have moved to America, but also because the time they spent in America, the home has changed, the family has changed, right? So there is an even greater need that Ashima and Ashok experience to hold family together, to tie Gogol and Sonia, their children, to Indian traditions and Indian culture, or the Bengali traditions and Bengali culture that they left back. They left in Calcutta because they are in a remote country where they need to preserve their tradition, and also back home, Calcutta, Bengali culture in Calcutta has changed, right? So they're trying to hang on to the tradition of joint families, of having a close knit family. They're trying to hang on to these traditions, tradition of getting married in a very traditional manner within the community. So they're trying to preserve that. But remember that there is a difficulty in preserving that because one, they are in America, which is far, far away from their home, the traditions that were practiced at home. The second is distance in terms of time. Calcutta, as I said, or Bengali culture in India has changed, right? So they are so in a way they have not witnessed that change. So when they go back to India, they're looking for the family of their childhood, which does not exist anymore. So even so, a greater need to cling to those traditions, to that culture. So two things: one is the distance, and the other is time. India is not static. Bengali culture is not static. Important part of the background is intercultural encounters and the diaspora. That is a formation of in groups and out groups. So in a diasporic, till now we have talked about how the need to preserve Indian culture or Bengali culture within the community of Bengali Americans, right? Bengali Indian Americans. So they're interacting within the family, they're interacting with the friends from the same family. But living in America, it's not possible not to interact with other groups, right? It is not possible to not to interact with Americans. Gogol has friends who are American. Later on, he meets girls and he has relationships with non-Indian, non-Bengali girls. His sister Sonia is finally engaged to a non-Bengali, a white American person. Not white. I don't remember whether it is specified, but definitely a non-Bengali, non-Indian person. So there are encounters, intercultural encounters, diasporic encounters. You cannot live within a cocoon, right? You cannot live and interact only with Bengali Indian Americans, right? You cannot interact only with Bengali people in America. The children do have to go to school. uh, Ashok, the father, teaches in MIT, where there are professors, there are teachers, there are students, there are staff from all over the world. Ashima, the mother, when she goes out shopping, later on, when she starts doing a little bit of work in the library, she starts working in the library, she has to interact with non Bengalis, non Indians. So this it is also a story of a community trying to preserve itself, and it is at the same time, it is a community, it is also a story for community opening up slowly to intercultural, interracial, inter-community encounters. And that is what diaspora is about. So diaspora is not just about preserving Indian American culture in America, sorry, preserving Bengali culture in America. Diaspora is also a process of becoming American, right? Diaspora is also a process of reconciliation between Indian culture and American culture. So diaspora is kind of, it's a process, right? I say I would call it a process, not just a condition of existence. You're longing for home and you cannot go back home, and so a condition of exile and all that. But I think diaspora is also about finding a new home, a rooting, putting down roots, making a home into a new in a new country. So it's not just about longing in exile, but also making a new home. And in that process of making a new home, you encounter, you open up a little bit, you interact with other cultures, you interact with other communities, and make a kind of a create a kind of a niche, create a space for yourself, for your own community, which is open to other, but at the same time, it's open to other communities, the in groups, right? In group, it would be the Bengali community, the out groups, the other communities that they are living with, right? Other Indian communities. Maybe there is a community of South Indian, South people from South India and in America. So you're opening up to that. Americans, Mexicans, or so different communities living. So opening up to different communities. So opening to out groups, right? So preserving in groups and at the same time opening up to out groups. That's the part of being diasporic. I think it is important to note, or it is an important, her stylistics are important to know. It is a very plain, straight, direct, and descriptive style. It is you do not really. She's trying to tell her experiences. She's trying to tell about her memories in a very plain, descriptive, and but at the same time very sensuous and a very uh, the language evokes sensory details. It captures the experiences, but it's not very. It's a simple descriptive language which makes a direct connection with the readers. She shows how later generations depart from the constraints of immigrant parents who are devoted to their communities, the responsibility to other migrants. The second generation is a little more open, second generation and third generation maybe even more open. So it shows a progressive in a very simple, direct description. It's a very simple description of the process of being diasporic. And so, with that, we come to the end of this session. I have not really started the novel, but I have given you some idea about the background, the themes, the important themes, the background to the to the writer, and so on. We in the next session we begin with the first few chapters of the novel. Now, I realize that my videos are very long. My videos are quite, it might seem to you that they're quite repetitive, but I purposely repeat myself so that the information or the message that trying to convey is delivered. It stays with you. It stays in your mind. I'm not just going to, and my lectures are not just about explaining or narrating or telling you the story. I'm going to discuss the themes, the implications. I'm going to critique the novel. It is a critical analysis of the novel or poetry or short story, whatever I do. It is a critical analysis. And I hope my aim is not just to give you the story or just, but to develop a kind of critical thinking, how to read literature. And most importantly, this is going to tell you what to write, what are the things to consider. Basically, I'm giving you language, I'm giving you vocabulary, I'm giving you thoughts, points, uh, critical analysis, everything that you should be doing in your written answer, in your critical answers, in your critical essays. So it is not just about narrating the novel, important points. It is a lecture which is supposed to make you think and supposed to make you understand the novel and its in its entirety, in its entire depth. So I'll stop here now, and for the next session, I begin with the novel.